A teacher has finished grading their students' tests and needs your help to calculate the average score for the class. It says here to complete the getAverage function, which takes in an array of test scores and returns the average score. The average is calculated by adding up all of the scores and dividing by the total number of scores. So we have an example here. A couple of function calls have been provided for you so you can test out your code. We have a tips. You can use a loop to iterate over the scores array and add up all the scores. You can use the length property to get the total number of scores. So perhaps we could use this one, but we won't use this one because there's already a method for adding up all of the scores that can be used, which is the reduce method. So that's another tip. Before making a method from scratch, all you have to do is to search it up if it does exist. So in our case, it does. In our case, that would be the reduce method. As you can see here, finding an average of an array with JavaScript. So we will modify that. We have a syntax here, the array, and then the interpolated reduce method and its syntax. This is from the opening parenthesis until the closing bracket is the callback, and 0 is the initial value. So to put that in work, let's go back here and paste here our syntax. So for now, we do know that average in general is getting the sum of all scores divided by the total number of scores. So first we would get first the total of scores. So let's create a variable called total and assign it to the calculation of getting the sum of all scores. We could do that by reduce method, and reduce method is a method used in arrays. So again, before interpolating an array method, first we would have to access our array. In our case, our scores parameter, because as it says, complete the getAverage function which takes in an array of test scores. So this is an array, and as you can see here, there is an array here. So we would have to access our array first and then interpolate the reduce method. Okay, so again, we have here our syntax of our reduce method. So we have a callback, and then the initial value. And then the accumulator and current value. And then you have to return it. But for a more readable code, you would get rid of this and turn it to an implicit return. So let's get rid of this one and just call here sum. As for the accumulator and our current value, let be our accumulator would be the sum, and the current value would be total. Okay, but this is just a parameter. It needs its implicit callback. So it needs an implicit return with an arrow function pointing to the right and the calculation. That would be sum plus total. Nice. So this is equivalent to this one. Okay, it's more readable. And our initial value would start from 0. So now this line of code gets the sum of all scores. sum of all scores. Yeah, which is actually the total. What? Total sum. Is my variable name bad? Sum of all scores. Wait, sum of all scores. Yeah. Okay, anyways. So we now have the sum of all our scores. What we what we will do now is to divide. So let's return, and then it should it should get the sum of all scores and divide it by the total number of scores. And we have to remember, scores is an array. What does it mean by the total number of scores? That would mean getting the number or the total elements of our scores array. And we do have a property of that is the length. So length is a property used for arrays to get all of the elements of an array. So all we have to do is divide the sum of all scores with accessing scores, which is our array, and then interpolating the length to essentially get all the total number of our scores. So that's it. So how does it do? So our initial value is 0, but as you can see here, we have our very first console.log. That would mean our initial value would be 92. So that would mean that sum starts from 0. Sum starts from 0, which is the initial value, but it would start processing the first element at 92. So the very first iteration would be sum is equal to 0 plus 92. 0 plus 92, and it will equal to 92. Okay, the second iteration would be, that would mean that the score or the current array element would be at 92. This one, score. This is our current element. And moving on to the second iteration, that would mean that sum or the accumulator or our sum would equal to the result of 92, which is the result of from our first iteration, 92 plus 88, because 88 it would be now our current value. Yeah, because it's the second iteration. So 92 plus 88, that would mean that would equal to the result 180. Yes. Essentially, the average of 88 plus 92 is 180, and so on and so forth. So I hope you get that right. Nice.